There was a time, long before the world learned to rush, when wishes were spoken softly and still found their way into the fabric of life. In those days, the earth listened, the wind remembered names, and even the smallest hope could bloom into something extraordinary. At the edge of a wide meadow, where wild grasses swayed like gentle waves, stood a modest cottage. It belonged to a woman whose life was humble and honest. She had food on her table, warmth in her hearth, and flowers blooming faithfully in her garden each spring. Yet when evening came and shadows stretched across the floor, silence settled heavily beside her. She would light a lamp and place it near an empty chair, lingering there as if expecting someone to enter. Every night, before sleep claimed her, she whispered the same prayer to the stars. "Let me love someone." She did not know if anyone heard. She only knew she would keep hoping. One twilight evening, as the sky blushed with amber and rose, a soft knock sounded at the door. Standing outside was an old woman bent with age, her cloak worn thin, her eyes shining with a strange and gentle knowing. The cottage woman welcomed her without hesitation, offering warm bread and fresh milk. The old woman ate slowly, as though tasting not only the food, but the kindness behind it. When old woman finished her food, she reached into her cloak and placed a tiny seed into the young woman's palm. "This seed carries more than life," the old woman said softly. "It carries purpose. Plant it with patience, and do not rush what grows." Before another word could be spoken, she vanished into the dusk, leaving behind only the seed and a sense that something unseen had already begun. The woman planted the seed in a small pot near the window, watering it gently and waiting. By morning, the earth had split. A tall flower stood where the seed had been, its petals glowing as if dawn itself rested within them. Trembling, the woman leaned closer. Slowly, the petals opened. Inside sat a tiny girl, no larger than a thumb. Her golden hair shimmered softly, and her eyes sparkled with quiet life. The woman fell to her knees. "My child," she whispered. "My Thumbelina." In that moment, the emptiness she had carried for years finally lifted.
Thumbelina's childhood was woven from tenderness and care. Her cradle was a walnut shell lined with moss. A rose petal served as her blanket, a violet leaf her pillow. She bathed in warm teacups and drank from morning dewdrops. Crickets sang her lullabies. Butterflies hovered like living jewels. Flowers bent toward her voice as though listening. As Thumbelina grew, she began to understand that her smallness shaped how others saw her, but not who she truly was. When ants argued loudly and beetles boasted of their strength, she listened quietly, noticing things they overlooked: the wilting of flowers before rain, the silence after harsh words, the comfort hidden in patience. Slowly, she learned that gentleness was not weakness. It was endurance, and though the world often rushed past her, Thumbelina learned to pause, and in pausing, she learned to survive. Yet sometimes she gazed beyond the window at the wide world outside. It was beautiful and frightening. One warm afternoon, while wandering beyond the cottage garden, Thumbelina was discovered by a group of beetles resting beneath broad leaves. At first, they admired her golden hair and delicate voice, lifting her gently to show the others. But admiration soon turned to judgment. They whispered that she was too quiet, too strange, too different to belong among them. One by one, they lost interest and flew away, leaving Thumbelina alone on a blade of grass. She sat silently, her heart aching not because they rejected her, but because she realized how easily the world dismissed what it did not understand. That day, Thumbelina learned her first painful truth. Not everyone who sees you will truly see you. As one moonless night, while Thumbelina slept, an old toad crept through the open window. Her eyes gleamed with selfish calculation. "She will do," croaked the toad. Small, quiet, easy to control. Without waking her, the toad carried Thumbelina away to the river and placed her upon a wide lily leaf drifting in the dark water. When Thumbelina awoke, fear seized her heart. Water stretched endlessly around her, reflecting her trembling face. She did not scream, she cried, and the river listened. As the lily leaf drifted farther from the toad's reach, Thumbelina felt the pull of the current beneath her. For a moment, fear urged her to cling tightly and resist the river's movement. But something within her whispered that stillness was more dangerous than change. She loosened her grip. In that moment, Thumbelina made her first true choice, not to fight the world, but to trust movement over fear, possibility over control. The fish beneath the water felt her sorrow ripple through the current. Moved by compassion, they gnawed through the lily stem, setting it free. Dragonflies circled above, while butterflies tugged gently with silken threads, guiding her towards safety. Thumbelina did not know their names, but she never forgot their kindness. Freedom was wide and lonely. Thumbelina wandered through forests and fields, sleeping beneath leaves and surviving on nectar and pollen. Nights were cold, stars were distant and silent. One stormy night, exhausted and shivering, she curled beneath a fallen leaf as rain soaked the earth. Despair pressed heavily upon her heart. "Was I meant to be born so small?" she whispered. Pressing her hand to the ground, she prayed quietly for strength. When dawn arrived, sunlight filtered through the leaves above her, warming her face. She rose slowly, not renewed, but still standing. And that was enough.
When autumn arrived, the air sharpened and flowers faded. Weak and trembling, Thumbelina collapsed near the burrow of a field mouse. The mouse was practical and cautious, but allowed Thumbelina to stay in exchange for work. Thumbelina cleaned, cooked, and listened politely as the mouse spoke endlessly of comfort and security. Soon, she was introduced to the mouse's wealthy neighbor, the mole. He was respected and rich, but he despised sunlight and flowers. His world was made of tunnels and gold. When marriage was proposed, no one asked Thumbelina what she wanted. Because she was small, though she obeyed outwardly, Thumbelina carried a quiet rebellion within her. Each night, she hid a single flower petal beneath her pillow, a memory of the world above. She memorized the warmth of sunlight, the sound of wings, the scent of blossoms. While others planned her future underground, Thumbelina guarded her memories fiercely. They became her resistance, proof that even if her body was confined, her spirit remained free.
As spring approached and the swallow grew stronger, Thumbelina faced one last moment of doubt. The field mouse, noticing her hesitation, offered her a quieter life, small comforts, safety, and certainty if she stayed. For a moment, Thumbelina imagined a life without danger, without fear, lived entirely in shadows. But then she remembered the warmth of the sun, the sound of wings, and the promise she had once whispered to the earth beneath a fallen leaf. Gently, she declined the offer. In choosing uncertainty over silence, she chose herself. And with that choice, her heart felt lighter than it ever had before.
One bitter afternoon, Thumbelina found a swallow lying frozen beneath the snow. Others passed it by, calling it useless. Thumbelina knelt beside it. She wrapped it in leaves, warmed it with her hands, and whispered stories of open skies and summer winds, even as her own hope felt buried. All winter, she cared for the bird, and spring remembered her kindness. When the swallow awoke and stretched its wings, it saw Thumbelina's sadness. "You were never meant for the dark," it said gently. On the night she chose to leave, Thumbelina paused and looked back at the burrow. She felt no anger, only quiet understanding that not everyone could see her heart. Freedom, she realized, did not require bitterness. When she stepped onto the swallow's back, she carried nothing but hope, and hope was light enough to fly. They flew beyond rivers, mountains, and seas until they reached a land where flowers bloomed endlessly. From one radiant blossom emerged a tiny prince, no taller than Thumbelina, his eyes warm and kind. "You belong here," he said. For the first time, the world felt right. Thumbelina was given wings, a crown of petals, and a new name, Maya, the little miracle. Thumbelina had been taken, silenced, underestimated, and nearly buried beneath expectations. Yet she endured, not through strength of body, but through strength of heart. And so her story is whispered wherever someone feels too small for the world they inhabit. The gentlest souls often carry the greatest courage.
And so, when the journey had ended and the longings of many hearts had finally found their answer, Thumbelina returned to the little cottage where her story had begun with the woman. She did not come alone. Beside her stood the flower prince, radiant and kind, his wings catching the sunlight like petals in bloom. The woman welcomed them with tears that carried no sorrow, only gratitude. In that moment, the cottage no longer felt empty, nor did the garden feel quiet. Laughter returned softly at first, then freely, as if it had only been waiting to come home. Thumbelina had found her place in the world, the prince had found his queen, and the woman, who had once lived only with memories, now lived surrounded by love. And from that day on, the garden bloomed brighter than ever, not because of magic alone, but because 3 hearts had finally found where they truly belonged.